Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you, here to talk about the new KK's Priest song, which I think is outstanding. It's entitled One More Shot at Glory, and the album is When the Sinner Rides Again. That's the album it's coming out on, which comes out in September, I believe on the 29th. So there are pre-orders ready for it, to pre-order the album. And I know it's a long ways away. I know September seems to be a long ways away, but to be honest with you, they need to, they pretty much probably have already been producing product, but it takes a long time for record labels and for bands to get their product printed and produced, simply because these days, and you've heard me talk about it on this channel, it's, these factories are pretty much maxed out, especially when it comes to vinyl. So the new KK's Priest song, here's what I'm going to say about it. First of all, I think it's great. It's a great song. I liked the previous album quite a bit. It got an 8 out of 10. So definitely a very good record. My gut feeling tells me that this album is going to be a little bit better. There was really nothing. So, for example, there really was nothing new as far as the KK's Priest album was concerned. It's straight ahead, classic sounding heavy metal. You have Tim Ripper Owens singing on it, and he sounds amazing. And of course, KK Downing, there really isn't much more to be said about him. Obviously in Judas Priest. And I still think he should be in Judas Priest, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this segment. But clearly, he has not lost a step on his guitar playing. And he has, these guys have really put a great band around them. KK has really put a great band around him. And I think that first album to me was excellent. In fact, I remember when it came out, and it blew me away. And every time I think of Tim Ripper Owens, it's kind of funny because I think the stuff that Tim's doing now, that new EP he put out back in December or January. I don't remember when it came out now, but it was album of the month on this show back in January. The first EP that's ever been album of the month in 25 years. It really is that good. Phenomenal record. Sounds great. His vocals are phenomenal. The songs are great. Tim, with the 3 tremors. And then, of course, you have KK's Priest. So I'm gonna flat out tell everybody right now, as far as I'm concerned, what Tim Ripper Owens is doing now, in my opinion, is better than what he did with Iced Earth and Priest. I really honestly believe that. Before this latest batch of projects, he had some cool stuff. Charred Walls of the Damned. That was a really cool. That's a really cool band. I loved the Beyond Fear album. That's probably one of the best things he's ever done. But these last few projects and bands that Tim has been involved with, in my opinion, this is the best work musically, in my opinion, that he's done. I know that sounds crazy. I thought his time with Priest was great. I thought that, I love Jugulator. I think Jugulator is a great progression, as far as Priest getting a little bit heavier because it came off Painkiller. Then Tim comes in. He's got a little bit of a different voice, a little more suited for the modern age back at that time. And then you had Demolition, which was kind of an interesting album. It had a lot of industrial tinges to it. But when you have songs, like the title, like the first song on the album, and then, of course, Subterfuge, I thought was a great song as well. Probably one of my favorite Judas Priest songs, period. But those albums weren't bad. I like Jugulator a lot more. He did the stuff with Iced Earth, and I don't know, there's something seemed a little bit off there. Believe it or not, I liked the Framing Armageddon album, the second album he did, a little bit better. Because I think when they were doing that record, I think John Schaefer, I think the original songs on The Glorious Burden were kind of written for Matt Barlow, and then he left. And so Tim sang them. But I think the Framing Armageddon, the material on that album, I think really fit Tim's voice a little bit better because, it was basically, at least from what I can tell, specifically written for his voice. So, Tim's done some great stuff, but I'll tell you what, KK's Priest, I think is one of the best things he's ever done. Three Tremors is phenomenal. And his EP in the newest Ripper EP is amazing. I think this is his best work. This guy has been doing this for a long time. In my opinion, he's putting out his best work. And it's better, in my opinion, than anything he's done before that. Although Beyond Fear, I think I'd put up there with it as well. So the KK's Priest song, I think, is very, very good. It sort of picks up where the last album let off. I think the song, the interesting thing is, I think the songwriting on it, a little bit better than the previous album. I think, personally, this second KK's Priest album is going to be a little bit better than the first one. Because debut albums, let's face it, yeah, I know KK and Tim worked together in the past, but, when you put together a project and a band, sometimes it takes an album or two to really get everything to gel perfectly. I mean, you have a growing period. But I really dig the song. I think it's very, very good. The one little rant I am going to talk about, though, and this is something that I haven't really touched on, that is KK Downing and the fact that I think he should go back to Judas Priest, and I think the band should take him back. Now, hear me out here, because I know some fans are a little bit bitter over the things he wrote in his book, and I've read the book. I think it's a very well-written book, and I know it probably caused some bad blood between him and the band. Now, I know they did this whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, but I think KK should be back in Priest. And I'm going to tell you why I think that. Like when I think of Judas Priest, I think of three main guys that were pretty much the nucleus of that band for almost its entire existence. It was Rob Halford, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing. Those are like the three main guys. I mean, I know Ian Hill's been there forever, but the three guys mentioned in Tipton, Downing, and Halford, I mean, those are the three main guys for me. And I think Judas Priest loses something without KK being in the band, especially since Glenn Tipton is not really there anymore. I mean, yeah, I know that he does contribute a little bit, most likely to the upcoming album. And I know he played a couple songs here and there, during some of their shows. But let's be honest. I saw Judas Priest without Glenn playing, with Andy Sneap and Richie Faulkner on guitar. It felt like there was something missing. It really did. And I saw them with Glenn after KK left, with Glenn playing. It still sort of felt like Priest to me. I thought it was still very good. Richie Faulkner is a good guitar player. I'm not saying he isn't. But he's not KK Downing, at least when it comes to Judas Priest. I think KK should be there. I really do. As much as I love Andy Sneap as a producer and how important he is to this genre of music, especially to the thrash metal scene, to be honest, I would rather have KK playing on stage with them than Andy Sneap. Now, granted, I get it. KK probably pissed some of these guys off. There's probably a little bit of bad blood here and there, but to me, nobody's getting any younger. I mean, how old are these guys? They're in their 70s. I think he should come back to Priest. He needs to come back. In my opinion, as much as I love these KK Priest albums, KK needs to be back in Judas Priest. He really does. I remember there was one argument where they were talking about, like Richie Faulkner would have to learn all of, Glenn's parts, and I don't see why that would be an issue. I mean, the guy's a professional, first of all. Second of all, he's good enough to learn those parts, assuming he hasn't done that already. But that was an argument. It was actually a very bad one. But I like to see KK back in the band. Let bygones be bygones. Put the bad blood aside. And go back. Last time I saw Priest was without him or Glenn. And I'll be honest with you, it really wasn't that great of a show. So I am hoping somewhere down the line that, KK Downing does, in fact, join that band, or at least play some shows with them. Maybe a festival, but I think he should be back. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to the KK's Priest album, the new one. Go in the show notes. I put a link to the pre-order. I put a link to the song, and I suggest you go and pre-order it. I just did. So I'm really excited over the fact that I just pre-ordered the album, I think yesterday. And I think it's going to be a really good one. In fact, I think it's going to be a masterpiece. I think it's going to be better than the last album. And that is my opinion. With that being said, folks, thanks for watching. If you like what you see and hear on this podcast, of course, you can subscribe, like the video, leave a good comment on the video, and I will see you all soon.